In a small village, nestled among rolling hills in South Africa, there lived a girl named Naledi. From the day she was born, everyone knew Naledi was different. As a baby, she was twice the size of other infants. By the time she could walk, she was already as tall as a 5-year-old. And when she turned 10, Naledi towered over her classmates and even the tallest men in the village. Naledi's parents, Jabulani and Zanele, loved their daughter very much. They marveled at her quick growth and kind heart. But they also worried about her future. How would their giant girl fit into a world built for smaller people? As Naledi grew, so did the villagers' fear and mistrust. Children ran away when they saw her coming, screaming, "Giant! Giant!" Adults whispered behind their hands and gave her strange looks. No one seemed to understand that inside Naledi's big body was a gentle soul who just wanted to make friends. At school, Naledi sat alone at a big desk at the back of the class. The other students whispered and giggled when she walked by. Even the teacher, Mr. Mtembu, seemed unsure of how to treat her. "Naledi," Mr. Mtembu would say, "please try not to block the blackboard." Or, "Naledi, be careful not to bump the other children's desk." Naledi tried her best to make herself smaller. She hunched her shoulders and tried not to stand out. But no matter what she did, she could not change who she was. Every day after school, Naledi would take the long way home, following a path through the forest. She liked it there. The trees didn't stare or whisper, and some were even taller than her. In the quiet of the woods, Naledi could pretend she was just like everyone else. One afternoon, while walking her forest path, Naledi heard a tiny meow. She looked around and saw a little kitten stuck high up in a tree. The poor thing was scared and couldn't get down. Without thinking, Naledi reached up and easily plucked the kitten from the branch. For the first time, she felt glad to be told. The kitten belonged to Gogo Dinewo, a kind old woman who lived at the edge of the forest. When Gogo Dinewo saw Naledi holding her lost kitten, her face lit up with a warm smile. "Thank you, child," Gogo Dinewo said, taking the kitten. "You know, your size is a gift. One day, you'll see how it can help others." Naledi thought about Gogo Dinewo's words often, wondering if they could be true. But as days passed and the other children continued to avoid her, it was hard to believe. Weeks went by and the village faced a terrible problem. A long drought had come to the land. The river that flowed past the village slowed to a trickle, then dried up completely. The crops in the field withered under the hot sun. Animals grew thin and weak. There was no water to drink and everyone was thirsty and worried. The village elders met to discuss what to do. They sent men to search for water, but no one could find any. The nearest town with a well was many days' walk away. It seemed hopeless. Naledi listened to the adults talking and felt scared. What would happen to her village? Then she remembered something. Months ago, when exploring high up in the mountains, she had discovered a hidden spring. The water there was clear and fresh, bubbling up from deep within the earth. But it was so high up that no one else in the village could reach it. Naledi knew this was her chance to help. She could use her size to save the village. But she was nervous. What if she failed? What if the spring had dried up too? What if the villagers didn't accept her, even if she brought water? Despite her fears, Naledi knew she had to try. Early the next morning, before anyone else was awake, she set out for the mountain. She took with her as many large jugs as she could carry. The journey was long and difficult. The sun beat down on Naledi as she climbed higher and higher. Sharp rocks cut her feet and thorny bushes scratched her legs, but Naledi didn't give up. Her long legs carried her up steep paths that would have been impossible for others to climb. As she got higher, the air grew thin, and Naledi found it hard to breathe. Her muscles ached, and she wanted to rest. But she thought of her village, of the thirsty children and worried adults. This gave her the strength to keep going. Finally, after hours of climbing, Naledi reached the hidden spring. To her great relief, it was still flowing. The water was clear and cool, just as she remembered. Naledi laughed with joy and quickly began to fill her jugs. The trip back down the mountain was even harder. The jugs were heavy, and Naledi had to be careful not to spill the precious water. Her arms ached and legs trembled with each step. Several times she almost fell, but Naledi kept going, driven by the thought of helping her village. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Naledi finally stumbled into the village. She was exhausted, her clothes torn and dirty, her feet bleeding, but in her arms she carried the jugs full of life-giving water. At first the villagers didn't notice her. Then someone looked up and gasped. Soon everyone was staring in amazement as Naledi set down the heavy jugs. "Water!" someone shouted. "Naledi has brought us water!" The villagers rushed forward, their thirst overcoming their fear of Naledi's size. Children, adults, and elders all crowded around, eager for a drink. Naledi shared the water with everyone, even those who had been mean to her in the past. As the village elder, a wise old man named Mokhale took a long drink. He looked at Naledi with a newfound respect. "You have saved us all," he said. "How can we ever thank you?" Naledi smiled shyly. "I just want to belong," she said softly. Mokhale nodded thoughtfully. Then he turned to address the crowd. "Listen, all of you," he said in a loud voice. "We have been foolish. We feared Naledi because she was different. But look at what she has done. Her size, which we thought was a curse, has become a blessing for us all. From this day forward, Naledi shall be honored in our village." The villagers cheered and gathered around Naledi. For the first time in her life, she felt truly accepted. From that day on, everything changed for Naledi. The children who once ran from her now begged her to play with them. They invented new games that made use of her height, like Giant's Treasure, where Naledi would hide objects high up for the other kids to find. Adults asked for her help with tasks only she could do. Naledi fixed rooftops, picked fruit from the tallest trees, and helped rescue animals stuck in high places. Her long legs allowed her to run faster than anyone, so she became the village's messenger, carrying important news to far-off places. Naledi's teacher, Mr. Mtembu, apologized for how he had treated her before. He gave Naledi special lessons to help her catch up on the learning she had missed when she felt too shy to participate in class. Soon, Naledi was one of the best students in the school. As for the water problem, Naledi's discovery of the mountain spring saved the village. She taught some of the strongest men how to reach it, and together they built a system of pipes to bring the water down the village. Soon, crops were growing again and animals regained their strength. Naledi's parents, Jabulani and Zanele, were bursting with pride. They no longer worried about their daughter's future. Instead, they marveled at her strength, both inside and out. Years passed as Naledi grew into a young woman. She was now so tall that she had to duck to enter most houses in the village. But she stood straight and proud, no longer trying to make herself small. Travelers would come from far and wide to see the gentle giant of the village. Naledi would greet them with a warm smile, always ready to lend a helping hand or a long arm to anyone in need. Sometimes Naledi would visit Gogo Dinewo, the old woman who had first told her that her size was a gift. They would sit together, Naledi cross-legged on the ground, so she could look to Gogo Dinewo in the eye and share a cup of tea. "You see, child," Gogo Dinewo would say with a twinkle in her eye, "your difference became your strength. Never forget that." And Naledi never did. She lived a long and happy life, loved by all who knew her. Her story was told to children throughout the land, teaching them that our differences can be our greatest strengths, and that a big heart is the most important size of all. In the end, the girl who was once hated for her size became a hero, remembered not for how she looked, but for the size of her courage and the depth of her kindness.